Gentlemen, my daughter needs to learn some respect. I am selling her to whoever bids highest. The slam of a gavel silenced the saloon. Zara Adams, 20 years old, stood on a makeshift stage while her own father auctioned her off like livestock. She had refused 3 arranged marriages. She had tried to escape to San Francisco. And now, this was her punishment. $50, called an old rancher. 75, yelled a butcher with tobacco-stained teeth. 150. The bids climbed higher. The sheriff stood in the corner and did nothing. This was 1875 Nevada, and her father was too powerful to stop. Then a voice cut through the crowd. $500. A stranger stepped forward. Dusty boots, sun-weathered face, blue eyes that gave nothing away. He placed a leather pouch of gold coins on the stage. Sold. Her father shoved her forward so hard she nearly fell. The stranger caught her arm, firm, but it didn't hurt like her father's grip always did. And then he asked this question that changed everything. Where to? Not you belong to me now. Not here are your duties. Just where did she want to go? The lesson. True freedom isn't given, it's chosen. And the person who truly loves you won't try to own you. They'll ask where you want to go and then help you get there. If this story moved you, drop a comment and tell me, what would you have done in Zara's place? Like, share with someone who deserves to know their worth can never be measured in dollars. And subscribe so you never miss a story about women who refuse to be anyone's property. The slam of a gavel cut through the noisy saloon, silencing the afternoon chatter in Paradise, Nevada. There, on a makeshift stage, stood Zachariah Adams, his knuckles bone white as he clutched his daughter's arm. Zara Adams, a 20-year-old with hair the color of honey and defiant green eyes, stared into the distance, refusing to look at the greedy faces of the men gathered for this awful show on a blistering July day in 1875. Gentlemen, Zachariah's voice boomed, my daughter here needs to learn some respect. She has turned down 3 decent proposals, sneaks out at all hours, and just yesterday I caught her trying to catch a train heading east. For 20 years I put a roof over her head and food on her table, and this is how she repays me. He gave Zara a rough shake. So I am selling her to whoever bids highest. She has nothing but the clothes she is wearing and a stubborn streak that needs to be broken. Zara's chest burned with rage, but she kept her mouth shut. She had been silent since her father dragged her from their home after finding her with her bags already packed. She had a plan to run away to San Francisco, where her aunt, a woman who had built her own life without needing a husband, was waiting. Zara wanted a life like that, not to be handed over to one of her father's business partners just to help him climb the social ladder. "Do I have an opening bid of $50? Zachariah bellowed. A low murmur spread through the room. A few men chuckled, thinking it was all a big joke, but others leaned in, their interest sparked. 50, called out an old rancher who had to be at least 60. 75, yelled another, a heavy-set butcher with teeth stained brown from tobacco. A knot of dread tightened in Zara's stomach. This could not be real. Not in 1875, not in a place that was part of the United States. But her father was well connected in this town, and that included the town sheriff, who just stood in a corner watching with his arms folded across his chest and a troubled look on his face. 150, the butcher called out again. 200, said a miner with rough hands and hungry eyes. The numbers kept climbing, and Zara felt the sting of tears welling up. She blinked them away with fierce determination. She would not let her father or any of these vultures see her break down. $500. The voice was low, steady, and did not belong to anyone she knew. The crowd shifted, making a path as a tall man walked toward the stage. He wore dust-covered boots, old denim pants, and a navy shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, showing off his tanned skin. A brown Stetson hat was pulled down low, hiding his eyes. He stopped right in front of the platform and looked up. 500, he said again, his gaze locking with Zachariah's. Zachariah's eyes widened for a second at the large sum, then narrowed in suspicion. Do I know you, stranger? Name is Wade Lawrence, just passing through. He placed a leather pouch on the stage. The heavy sound of gold coins echoed in the now silent saloon. Zachariah tore it open, counted the money with greedy eyes, and then gave a sharp nod. Sold. He shoved Zara forward so hard she nearly fell right off the stage. The stranger, Wade, reached out and caught her arm. His grip was strong, but it didn't hurt the way her father's did. "You'll see I did you a favor one day, girl," Zachariah said, stuffing the money into his pocket without even looking at his daughter. "Maybe this will teach you where you belong." Zara finally let her voice out. "I don't belong with you, and I certainly don't belong to any man who buys people like livestock." Wade's hand tightened just a little on her arm, a silent signal. She could see his eyes now. They were a piercing blue against his sun-weathered face. He looked to be no older than 25 or 26. "Your things?" he asked, his voice soft. "I don't have anything," she replied, her own voice like ice, "just like my father so kindly announced." Wade gave a single nod and then led her toward the saloon doors. The crowd moved aside for them once more. Some men scowled in disappointment, while others just looked entertained. Zara glanced at the sheriff, who at least had the decency to look ashamed of himself before he looked away. The Nevada sun was brutal outside. Wade took her to a beautiful dapple-gray horse tied to the hitching post. "Climb on," he said, linking his hands to give her a step up. Zara just stared at him. "And why would I go anywhere with you? You just bought me." "Would you rather go back in there with your father?" Wade asked. His face was impossible to read under the shadow of his hat. She thought about it for a second, looking back at the saloon. "No," she admitted. That was the last thing she wanted. "I am going to San Francisco," she declared. "My aunt is there." Wade looked at her for a long moment. Then he asked a simple question. "Where to?" The question threw her off balance. He was not ordering her to follow him. He was not acting like he owned her. "What do you mean by that?" she asked with caution. "I mean exactly what I said. Where is it you want to go?" "You said San Francisco. That is a mighty long ride from here." Zara's brow furrowed and her anger started to give way to confusion. "Why would you pay $500 for me only to ask where I want to go?" A small smile appeared on Wade's lips. "Let's just say I had my reasons. Now, are you getting up on this horse? Or are you going to stand here until your father comes out and finds you?" That was all she needed to hear. Zara put her foot into his hands and let him help her onto the saddle. Wade swung up behind her easily, his arm settling around her waist to hold the reins. She immediately went rigid at his touch. "I am not going to hurt you," he said quietly, his voice close to her ear. "But we ought to put some miles between us and this town before your father gets sober enough to have second thoughts." And with that, he made a clicking sound and the horse started off at a steady pace, leaving Paradise and her father in the dust. Zara did not look back even once. She kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, her mind a whirlwind of questions. Who was this man, Wade? Why did he step in? And what did he really want from her? They rode for close to an hour without a word, surrounded by the vast, empty desert. The sun was starting to dip low in the sky when Wade finally pulled the horse to a stop next to a small stream. "We can rest here for a spell," he said, getting down before offering her his hand. Zara ignored it and slid off the horse on her own, almost losing her balance as her boots hit the dirt. She had not been on a horse in years, not since her mother passed away. Her father had sold her mother's favorite mare the day after the funeral. "You are not from around Paradise," she stated, watching Wade lead the horse to the water. "I would have known your face." "No, ma'am, I am not," he agreed. "I have been pushing cattle herds between Texas and Nevada for the last few years. I just finished a drive to a ranch near here yesterday." "That still does not explain why you were in that saloon at that very moment, or why you'd spend $500 on a woman you've never met." Wade took off his hat, showing a head of thick, dark hair that curled a little at his collar. He ran a hand through it and put the hat back on. I heard some men talking this morning about some fella threatening to sell his own daughter. I figured it was just empty talk until I walked in there and saw it with my own eyes. His jaw clenched. No man has the right to put a price on another person. Not his daughter. Not anybody. The way he said it made it sound like this was something personal to him. Zara looked at him more closely. You still have not explained the $500. That is more money than a cowboy makes in an entire year. Wade crouched by the stream, splashing his face with water before taking a drink from his hands. I have been saving up. There is not much to spend your wages on when you are out on the trail. It was not the whole story, and they both knew it. But Zara felt too worn out and shaken to push him for more. She sat down on a smooth, flat rock by the water, realizing just how parched she was. After drinking, she sat back and looked at her own reflection. Most of the pins had fallen from her hair, which now hung in messy waves around her face. Her skin was flushed from the sun and the wind, and her eyes had a haunted look she had never seen before. Was this what freedom was? Being bought by a stranger only to end up by a creek in the middle of nowhere? We can reach Elkwood before it gets dark, Wade said, pulling her from her thoughts. It is a small place, but it has a clean inn. You can get a hot meal and a real bed tonight. And what happens then? Zara asked, raising her head to look at him. You just let me walk away after you spent all that money on me? Wade looked her straight in the eye. That money bought you out from under your father's thumb. It did not buy you. Once we get to Elkwood, I will give you what you need to get to San Francisco, if that is still where your heart is set on going. Zara's eyes narrowed. Why are you doing this? What is in it for you? A dark look seemed to cross Wade's face for a moment. Just the satisfaction of knowing I did not just stand by and let a bad thing happen when I had the power to stop it. He turned away from her and began checking the horse's saddle. We should get moving if we want to beat the dark. Zara reluctantly stood up. Whatever this man's reasons were, he was right about one thing. She needed to get as far away from her father as she possibly could. She let Wade help her back onto the horse, and they continued their journey west. As the sun went down, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and red, Zara found herself starting to relax against Wade's steady frame behind her. His arm around her waist felt less like he was holding a prisoner, and more like he was keeping her safe. Even so, she stayed on her guard. In her 20 years of life, she had come to learn a hard truth. Men hardly ever gave a thing without wanting something back. As the twilight bled into night, the lights of Elkwood finally came into view. It was a humble little place, really just one main road with a handful of buildings, and sure enough, there was the inn. Wade steered the horse over to the hitching rail in front of the 2-story wooden structure. A stout woman with salt and pepper hair looked up from behind the counter as they stepped inside, her eyes sizing up Wade and then Zara with plain curiosity. We are going to need 2 rooms for the night, Wade said, setting some coins down on the wood. The woman's eyebrows went up a bit. I only have 1 room available, mister. A bunch of cowboys from the Circle M are holed up here. It is payday, you know. Wade's brow furrowed. Is there any other place to stay in this town? Nope, this is all there is. Unless you fancy a bed in the livery stable. Zara went rigid. The thought of sharing a room with this man was out of the question. I will take the stable, Wade spoke up before she could get a word out. The lady can have the room. The innkeeper just shrugged her shoulders. Have it your way. She slid a key across the counter. The room is up the stairs, last door on your right. The dining hall is through there, she said, pointing toward an archway where the warm scent of supper was drifting from. We are serving for about 1 more hour. Wade gave her a nod of thanks and then looked at Zara. You should get some rest. We can sort out your trip to San Francisco in the morning. Zara held the key tight in her hand, feeling a sudden wave of doubt. Was he really going to sleep in a barn just so she could have her own room? Thank you, she managed to say, the words feeling foreign coming out of her mouth. She was not used to thanking men for simple decency. Wade just nodded. Do you want to get a bite to eat first? You must be starving. And she was. Her father had hauled her to that saloon before she had even had her midday meal. Yes, she said quietly. They walked into the dining hall, which was about half full of rough-looking fellas who all stopped to stare when they came in. Wade led Zara to a table tucked in the corner, sitting himself down with his back against the wall so he could see the whole room. That was the stance of a man who was used to keeping an eye on things, Zara noticed. A woman brought them 2 bowls of stew with bread and coffee. Zara ate like she had not seen food in days, doing her best to keep her manners, even though she was famished. Wade took his time, his gaze flicking between his plate and the other men in the room. "Why did you really step in today?" Zara asked, once the worst of her hunger was gone. Wade put his spoon down and thought on her question for a moment. "When I was 16, he said at last, my sister caught the eye of a man twice her age who decided he had to have her. My father, he agreed to it, never even asked her what she wanted. She ran off the night before the wedding." His face grew dark. They found her 3 days later. She had taken a fall from a cliff, trying to find her way to the next town in the pitch black. Zara felt her breath catch in her throat. "I'm so sorry. That was 8 years back. I was just 18 then, barely getting started on my own. I could not do a thing to save her." His sharp blue eyes locked with Zara's. "But I could do something to save you today." The pure, simple truth in his voice made Zara have to look away. "My mother passed 3 years ago," she offered, breaking the silence. "It was consumption. She was the only person who ever stood up to my father. After she died, he changed. He got colder, and he had to control every little thing, and that is when you knew you had to get to your aunt." Zara nodded. "She sends me a letter now and then, but my father does not know about it. She has a little dress shop in San Francisco. She told me I would always have a place with her, a chance to learn the trade." She ran her finger along the edge of her coffee cup. "I just want a life of my own, not to be some piece of property my father can trade away." "That is a fine thing to want," Wade said. He finished his coffee and pushed his chair back. "I better go check on my horse. You get some sleep, Miss Adams. Tomorrow we will get you on your way to San Francisco." As Wade walked off, Zara watched him go, seeing the sure way he carried himself. She saw how the other men in the room gave him a quick look, decided he was not a threat, and went back to their business. There was something about Wade Lawrence that told you he could be trouble if you pushed him, but he would rather just be left alone. For the first time since her father dragged her onto that auction block, Zara felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this whole nightmare would end up better than it started. The room upstairs was small, but it was clean. It had a simple bed, a washstand with a basin, and a window that looked out onto the main road. Zara washed her face and hands as best she could, then sat on the bed, feeling the weight of the day crash down on her all at once. Her own father had sold her, a stranger had bought her, and now she was all alone in some town she had never heard of, about to travel to a city she had never seen, to live with an aunt she barely remembered. The tears finally came, hot and quick, overflowing from the feelings she had been holding back all day. She cried for her mother and for the father she once knew before sadness twisted him into a man she did not recognize. And she cried for herself, lost in a world where women were treated more like things than people. When she had no more tears to cry, Zara fell back on the bed, pure exhaustion pulling her down. Her very last thought before sleep took her was of Wade Lawrence's steady blue eyes and the surprising kindness in his voice. Morning arrived with the clatter of wagons and horses on the street below. Zara woke up confused, forgetting for a second just where she was. Then everything from yesterday flooded back, and she sat bolt upright. The sun was pouring through the little window, telling her it was later than her usual waking time. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Miss Adams, are you up?" It was Wade's voice. Zara quickly tried to smooth out her dress and fix her hair before opening the door. Wade was standing there in the hall, looking clean-shaven and a whole lot more rested than she felt. He was holding a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. "Good morning," he said. "I went ahead and bought a few things you might need for your trip." He passed the bundle to her. "It is nothing special, I'm afraid." The general store did not have much to choose from. Zara unwrapped the cloth and found a simple wooden comb, a little bar of soap that smelled like lavender, a toothbrush, and a light shawl to keep the dust off. "Thank you," she said, and she truly meant it. His thoughtfulness was a welcome surprise. "They are serving breakfast downstairs. After we eat, we ought to talk about your travel arrangements." Wade paused for a second. "I have been asking around. A stagecoach comes through town tomorrow, heading west. It can get you to Carson City. From there you can get on a train to Sacramento, and then another one right to San Francisco." Zara nodded, taking it all in. It sounded like a solid plan, but the idea of traveling all that way by herself was frightening. "Have you ever traveled on a stagecoach?" Wade asked. "No," she confessed. "I have hardly left Paradise since we moved there 10 years ago." A hint of concern crossed Wade's face. "That is a rough trip even for a seasoned traveler, let alone for someone on their first long journey." "I do not really have another choice, do I?" Zara said. Wade looked like he was wrestling with a thought. "Let me take you," he said suddenly. "At least as far as Sacramento. I know the route, and you would be a lot safer than if you were on your own." Zara just stared at him. "You have already done so much for me. You cannot seriously want to spend days on a stagecoach just to make sure I get to California safely." "Well, it has been a while since I have been to California," Wade said with a casual shrug, but his eyes showed a steady resolve. "And as it happens, I do not have anywhere else I need to be. What about your job?" "The cattle drives are mostly done for the season. The herd I brought to Paradise was the last one I had for a while." Zara was torn. A part of her wanted to say no, to prove she could handle things herself. But the smarter part of her knew that a woman traveling alone was an easy target for all sorts of trouble. "I cannot ask you to do that," she said at last. "You are not asking." "I am offering," Wade replied, his expression softening just a little. "Just think of it as part of the price of your freedom." The way he said it made her think there was more to his offer than just being a gentleman. But before she could ask, he gestured down the hall. "Let us go get some breakfast. You can think it over while we eat." The dining room was quieter than it had been the night before. They took the same table in the corner, and the server brought them plates of eggs, bacon, and biscuits smothered in gravy. While they ate, Wade laid out the trip for her. It would be 2 long days on the stagecoach to Carson City, then a day on the train to Sacramento, and then another half a day on to San Francisco. He warned her that it was not going to be a pleasant trip. Stagecoaches are cramped, always full of dust, and they only pull over for a quick bite to eat or to swap out the horses. "I am a whole lot tougher than I look," Zara said, tilting her chin up just a bit. A faint smile played on Wade's lips. "I do not doubt that for a second, Miss Adams. Please just call me Zara," she told him on an impulse. "I mean, you did buy me, after all." The words tumbled out with more bitterness than she had meant. Wade's face grew serious. "I did not buy you, Zara. I bought your father's legal claim over you. There is a real difference there." She looked down at her dinner plate. "I know. And I am thankful. It is just so humiliating being sold off like a head of cattle." "That shame belongs to your father, not to you," Wade said, his voice firm. Their eyes locked across the table, and in that quiet moment, something unspoken passed between them. Maybe a shared sense of understanding or just the simple recognition of another person who had seen their share of hardship. "I will accept your offer to escort me to California," Zara said at last. "But I have to insist on paying you back as soon as I am able. My aunt will help me find a job, and I will send you the money just as soon as I can." Wade looked like he was about to argue, but then he seemed to understand how important it was for her to keep her dignity. "As you wish," he said, "though there is no real hurry." Now that their plan was settled for the time being, Wade suggested they take a look around the little town. "You will be doing more than enough sitting on this journey," he noted, "and we probably ought to buy a few more supplies for your trip." Elkwood turned out to be a classic frontier town, dusty and built for purpose, but it had a certain charm. The general store was surprisingly well stocked, and Wade insisted on buying Zara a durable travel bag, a fresh set of clothes, a water canteen, and a hat with a wide brim to keep the sun off her face. "This is far too much," she protested while the store owner wrapped up their things. "Just think of it as an investment in a comfortable trip," Wade replied. A sunburnt and thirsty travel partner would make for one long and miserable ride. His dry sense of humor made her laugh, and it might have been the first real laugh she had enjoyed in months. It felt foreign but wonderful, like finding a treasure you had forgotten you even had. They used the rest of the day getting everything ready for their travels. Wade found a place to board his horse in Elkwood until he got back. He bought their tickets for the stagecoach, and he sent a telegram to Sacramento about their train connections. Zara was amazed at how efficient and knowledgeable he was. It was obvious this was not his first long trip. That evening, as they sat in the inn's dining room once more, Zara found herself watching Wade more openly. In the soft lamplight, she could make out the faint lines around the corners of his eyes, the kind a man gets from years of squinting into the sun. A small, white scar cut right through his eyebrow, and his hands, while clean, had the calluses and nicks of a man who was used to hard work. "How long have you been a cowboy?" she asked him. Wade thought about the question for a moment. "I started working with cattle when I was about 16. Before that, I just helped out on my family's farm back in Missouri." "And what about your family? Are they still living in Missouri?" A shadow seemed to pass over his face. "My parents died within a year of my sister, all from farm fever. My younger brother lives in St. Louis now, has a job with the railroad." "I am so sorry," Zara said softly. "It sounds like both of us have lost a great deal." Wade nodded, his face looking somber. Loss has a way of shaping a person, of making them who they are. He looked straight at her. "What are you planning to do in San Francisco besides helping your aunt?" The question caught Zara by surprise. She had been so focused on just getting away from paradise that she had not really thought much past that one goal. "I want to learn," she said after thinking for a second, "to read more books, to understand how the world works, maybe even to write something myself." She paused and then added, "My mother taught me to love books, but my father always said that too much reading gave women dangerous ideas." "And does it?" She could hear a little bit of amusement in Wade's voice. "I certainly hope so," Zara answered, a small smile appearing on her own face. Their conversation flowed easily for the rest of the evening. Moving from their favorite books, Wade, to her surprise, was a fan of Shakespeare, to what they hoped for in the future. By the time they said goodnight, Zara was surprised to realize how at ease she felt with this man who had been a complete stranger only yesterday. As she got ready for bed, she thought about the strange turn her life had taken. Just yesterday morning, she was making plans to run away from her father's home, with no idea what would happen next. Now, she was setting out on a journey across half the country with a cowboy who had paid a small fortune just to give her a chance at freedom. The stagecoach pulled in a little after noon the next day, a dusty old carriage pulled by a team of 6 horses. It was already holding 4 other passengers, a couple in their middle years who said their names were the Hendersons, a traveling salesman who introduced himself as Pritchard, and a young preacher named Reverend Collins. Wade gave Zara a hand up into the coach, then he climbed in right behind her. The inside was packed tight, with hardly enough space for the 6 of them and the small bags they carried. The bigger trunks were tied down on the roof. "Is this your first time on a stagecoach, miss?" Mrs. Henderson asked with a kind voice, seeing the wide-eyed look on Zara's face. "Yes, madam, it is," Zara confessed. "Well then, you had better brace yourself for a bumpy ride," the older woman said with a smile that showed she knew exactly what was coming. "And do not be afraid to lean on your husband when the road gets rough. That is what my man's shoulder is for after 30 years of marriage." Zara's face turned red. "Oh, Mr. Lawrence is not—" "We are not married." Wade stepped in smoothly. "Miss Adams is my cousin. I am just seeing her safely to her aunt's house in San Francisco." The story seemed to satisfy Mrs. Henderson, although Reverend Collins did raise an eyebrow just a little. Zara gave Wade a look of thanks for his quick thinking. A single man and woman traveling alone together would surely cause talk, but cousins were perfectly acceptable. As the stagecoach jerked and started to move, beginning what was sure to be a punishing journey, Zara found herself wondering about the real Wade Lawrence. He had told her a little about his past, but she had a strong feeling there was a lot more to his story than what he had shared. What was the real reason he had been in paradise that day? And why on earth was he willing to go so far out of his way to help a woman he did not even know? The first day on the road was every bit as miserable as Wade had promised. The coach bounced and rocked over the uneven ground, kicking up clouds of dust that found its way through every little crack. They made a short stop at a way station for a meal of beans and tough beef, and then they pushed on until dark. The station where they stopped for the night was not much more than a fortified house that had a few rooms set aside for travelers. The men all slept in one big room, and the women slept in another. The beds were crude and hard, but after a full day of being jolted around in the stagecoach, even that hard cot felt like a blessing to Zara. The second day was much the same as the first. By the time they finally rolled into Carson City, Zara was sore all over, covered in dust, and completely worn out. But she also felt a rush of excitement. She had never been so far away from home, and she had never seen such different kinds of country. The Sierra Nevada mountains stood like giants in the distance, and the air itself felt different, cleaner, and filled with the smell of pine instead of desert sage. Carson City was a true sight to behold after all the tiny little settlements they had passed. It was a real city with big, sturdy buildings, crowded streets, and a feeling of permanence that most frontier towns just did not have. Wade got them rooms at a hotel close to the train station, proper rooms that had real beds and private washrooms. "The train is set to leave at 10 tomorrow morning," he told Zara as they stood in the hotel lobby. "We ought to be in Sacramento by the time night falls." Zara nodded, suddenly realizing how much Wade stood out in this city environment. His clothes were worn from the trail and his skin was dark from the sun, marking him as a man who was much more at home out on the open range than in a city. And yet, he walked with that same quiet confidence here that he had back in the wilderness. "Would you care to join me for dinner after we have both had a chance to clean up?" he asked her. "I would like that very much," Zara answered. To be honest, she felt a little lost without his steady presence nearby, which was an unsettling feeling considering how short a time she had known him. An hour later, Zara came downstairs to the hotel's dining room feeling like a completely different person. She had taken a real bath for the first time in days, washing away all the grime from the road. Her hair, clean and freshly combed, fell in soft waves down her back. The simple blue calico dress Wade had bought for her back in Elkwood was a whole lot better than her wrinkled traveling clothes. Wade was down in the lobby, looking just as refreshed. He had taken a razor to his face and put on a clean shirt, but his clothes still marked him as a man who worked with his hands, not some city fellow. "You look," he started, but then he seemed to stop himself. "Rested," he said instead, though the look in his eyes told a different story. The hotel dining room was mighty fine for a frontier town with clean white tablecloths and real glass tumblers. Zara felt a sharp little ache, thinking of dinners just like this with her folks, before her mama got sick and her daddy still knew how to laugh. "What's on your mind?" Wade asked, seeing the change on her face. Zara gave her head a little shake. "Just old memories. A place like this, it just gets me to thinking about how things were before my mother passed on." Wade gave a slow nod of understanding. "Time has a way of changing things," he said softly, "and people more than anything." They ordered a fine meal, a true luxury, after so many days of trail fare. And while they ate, Zara couldn't help but wonder what would come next, after they finally got to San Francisco. "Are you heading back to Nevada once we get to the city?" she asked. Wade took a slow drink of his coffee before he answered. "Down the road. I've got some business to tend to in Sacramento first." "What kind of business?" The question popped out before Zara had a chance to think if she was prying. He paused for just a second. "Land matters. I've been giving some thought to settling down, getting away from the cattle drives." "Oh." Zara was taken aback by how that news made her feel. Wade had his own life, of course, his own plans to make. She had no right to his time past this trip, but the idea of them going their separate ways in Sacramento left a hollow feeling inside her. "Maybe," Wade said, choosing his words with care once. "You're all situated with your aunt. I could come calling on you in San Francisco if you'd be all right with that." Zara's eyes shot up to his, and she saw a flicker of something uncertain in his face before he hid it. "I would like that very much," she said, and she meant it. Something changed between them in that moment. It was a quiet shift in the air, a new kind of feeling. For the very first time, Zara let herself admit that what she felt for Wade Lawrence was more than just being thankful for his help. The rest of their supper was easy and pleasant, with their talk drifting from the history of Carson City to what they both expected to find in Sacramento and San Francisco. When they said their goodnights, Zara felt a strange mix of excitement and unease about the days to come. It was not just the train ride she was thinking about, but the journey her heart was just beginning. The train to Sacramento was a whole new world for Zara. It was nothing like that cramped and dusty stagecoach. The passenger car was quite comfortable, with soft padded seats and big windows that gave them a grand view of the country as it rolled by. As the train chugged up into the mountains, Zara leaned her head against the glass, just amazed by the tall pine trees and the stunning views. "It's just incredible," she said, turning to Wade beside her. "I never dreamed any place on earth could be this pretty." Wade's gaze softened as he watched her excitement. "There is a whole lot of beauty in this world, if a person just knows where to look for it." The journey carried them through high mountain passes, alongside rushing rivers, and at last down into the wide Sacramento Valley, a green and fertile land so different from the desert they'd left behind. Late that afternoon, the conductor called out that they were getting close to Sacramento. As the train slowed down, rolling into the edges of the city, Zara felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. Soon this part of their travels would be over. Wade would go see to his business, and she would have to go on to San Francisco by herself. The train station in Sacramento was a hornet's nest of activity, with porters hustling luggage, folks getting on and off the trains, and vendors shouting about newspapers and snacks. After the peace and quiet of the trip, all the noise and chaos was a bit much. Wade kept a steadying hand on Zara's elbow, guiding her through the swarm of people and into the station's main building. "The train for San Francisco pulls out tomorrow morning," he told her, after looking at a schedule on the wall. "We ought to find a place to stay for the night." "Will you have enough time to finish your business that quick?" Zara asked. Wade paused for a moment. "It might take me a few days, but there is no good reason for you to wait. You should go on to your aunt's like you planned." Zara bit her lip, not wanting to say out loud how scary it felt to think of finishing the trip on her own. "Of course," she said, trying her best to sound casual. "That makes perfect sense." Wade looked like he was about to say something else, but then a man's voice called out his name. They both turned and saw a man in a fine suit walking toward them. He was maybe in his 40s, with a trimmed beard and sharp, smart eyes. "Lawrence, I thought that was you." The man held out his hand and Wade shook it. "Judge Harmon," Wade said, and you could hear the surprise in his voice. "I did not figure on seeing you here. I am in town for the circuit court session," the judge said. His eyes then shifted to Zara with curiosity. "You'll have to forgive my poor manners," Wade said. "Judge Harmon, I would like you to meet Miss Zara Adams. Zara, this here is Judge Thomas Harmon of the Nevada Territorial Court." Zara gave a polite nod, wondering how in the world Wade knew a territorial judge. "A pleasure, Miss Adams," Judge Harmon said with a gentleman's bow. "Lawrence, I am glad I caught you. Some things have come up regarding that matter we spoke about. I wonder if we might have a word in private." Wade glanced over at Zara, looking like he was caught in the middle. "Please, do not let me keep you from your business," she said right away. "I can just wait right here." After thinking on it for a second, Wade nodded. "I will not be long," he promised, before he and the judge stepped away. They moved far enough that she could not hear them, but Zara could see by their faces that it was serious business. The judge did most of the talking, and Wade just listened and nodded every so often. What sort of dealings could a simple cowhand have with a territorial judge? The question just deepened Zara's feeling that there was a great deal more to Wade Lawrence than he was letting on. Just like he said, Wade came back after a few minutes. "Sorry about that," he said. "The judge has been giving me a hand with a legal issue." It looked serious, Zara noted, watching him closely. "It is, in its own way." Wade clearly was not about to say any more. "Come on, let's find that hotel. You must be worn out from the long ride." They found rooms in a hotel not far from the station, and after they had a chance to clean up, they went down to the hotel restaurant for supper. As they ate, Zara kept looking at Wade, trying to piece together the puzzle that he was. "You look like you're bursting with questions," he finally said, putting his fork down. Zara managed a small smile. "A few dozen, I reckon." "Go on and ask them," Wade said, plain and simple. She chose her next words with care. "You are not just a cowhand, are you? There is more to your story than that." Wade was quiet for a good long while, his blue eyes looking thoughtful. Then he let out a soft sigh. "You are right about that. I have not been completely honest about who I am." "Who are you really, Wade Lawrence?" Zara asked in a low voice. Wade took a look around the dining room. Then he leaned in a little closer. "I was a deputy United States Marshal for 3 years before I went back to ranching." Zara's eyes went wide. "A marshal?" That explained the way he carried himself, that watchful look he always had, and maybe even his connection with the judge. Wade nodded. "I still take on a job now and then for the marshal's office. Unofficial things, when they need a man who can move around certain places without being noticed." "Is that why you were in Paradise? On an assignment?" "Yes and no." Wade paused. "I was on the trail of a man, a cattle rustler with a reward on him. My information pointed me to Paradise, but finding you up on that auction block was never part of any plan." Zara took in this news piece by piece. "So when you said you delivered a herd of cattle, that part was the truth." "I have been working cattle drives in between jobs. It is good cover, and I do not mind the work. And your business in Sacramento?" "It is partly about that rustler I was after," Wade admitted, "but it is also personal. I have been saving up to buy a small ranch near here. The judge has been helping me work through the legal papers for the purchase." Zara leaned back in her chair, trying to make this new picture of him fit with the man she thought she knew. Wade. Well, that explained a whole lot. It explained his calm when things got rough, the steady way he handled himself, and how he just knew what was right and what was wrong. "Why are you telling me this now?" she finally asked. Wade looked her square in the eye. "Because I have reached a point where I do not want to keep anything from you. Not even the things I just have not said." That plain-spoken truth hit Zara right in the chest. Before she could find her words, Wade went on, "There is something else. I have made up my mind to see you clear through to San Francisco, not just stop in Sacramento if that is all right with you." A wave of pure relief washed over Zara. "I would be mighty grateful for that," she told him. "But what about your business here?" "It will keep for a little while longer." The hard lines of Wade's face seemed to gentle a bit. "Seeing you get to your aunt safe and sound feels like the most important thing right now." Later on, as Zara got ready for the night in her hotel room, she turned it all over in her mind. Wade Lawrence, a cowboy, a former lawman, and the last person she ever expected to be her guardian, was becoming far more important to her than she ever would have guessed. The idea of finally getting to San Francisco, only to have to part ways with him, was not just a worry anymore. It was a sharp ache. She told herself to stop such foolish thinking. They had known each other for barely a week. Her entire world was turned upside down, and she had no idea what tomorrow held. This was absolutely not the time to be getting soft on a man. But still, when she finally started to drift off, all she could see was Wade's steady blue gaze and the quiet strength he carried with him. The train pulled out of Sacramento at 9 o'clock the next morning, chugging its way southwest past rich farmland and towns that were popping up like wildflowers. Zara and Wade settled into seats by a window. The car was full of all sorts of folks, men in suits, families with children, and a couple of high-fashion ladies that Zara could not help but stare at. Would people in San Francisco expect her to be so polished? Her plain country dresses would stick out like a sore thumb amongst such fancy people. "You got a worried look on your face," Wade pointed out quietly. "Having second thoughts about San Francisco?" Zara shook her head. "Not really. I'm just now realizing I'm not the least bit ready for life in a big city." Wade's eyes followed hers to the well-dressed women. "Your aunt makes dresses for a living, does she not? I reckon she can help you figure out those kinds of things." "I suppose so," Zara sighed. "It is all just hitting me how much everything is about to change, and how little I know about this new world I am walking into." "Change can put a scare in you," Wade agreed. "But it can also be a powerful thing. You are free now. You can be anyone you want to be." Zara thought on that for a moment. "I wonder who that will be." "Someone truly special. I would bet my life on it," Wade said. And his words were so honest they made Zara's face feel warm. The rest of the train ride flew by, the land outside slowly changing as they got closer to the ocean. By early afternoon, they saw it for the first time. The San Francisco Bay, a huge stretch of blue water filled with every kind of ship you could imagine. "Oh, it is just beautiful," Zara whispered, leaning over Wade to get a better look out the window. "You just wait until you see the city proper," Wade said with a small smile. "There's no place on earth like San Francisco." When the train finally chugged into the station, Zara's stomach was in knots, a mix of excitement and pure nerves. She had wired her aunt from Sacramento to let her know they were coming, but she had not been able to get a message back. Would Aunt Cordelia even be there? And would she be as kind in person as she was in her letters? The station in San Francisco made the one in Sacramento look like a quiet country stop. It was a storm of noise, smells, and people moving in every direction. Wade stayed right by Zara's side as they pushed through the swarm of bodies, grabbed their luggage, and headed for the main doors. "Zara! Zara Adams!" A woman's voice cut right through the racket. Zara turned around and saw a slim woman, maybe 50 years old, dressed sharp in a deep red traveling suit. Her blonde hair, showing streaks of gray, was pinned up perfectly under a simple hat. It had been a long time, but Zara knew her mother's sister in an instant. "Aunt Cordelia!" she cried out, rushing toward her. They hugged tight, and then Cordelia held Zara by the shoulders to get a good look at her. "Just look at you," she said, her voice full of warmth. "You are the spittin' image of your mother when she was your age." Her eyes, the very same shade of green as Zara's, shined with happiness and maybe a few tears. "I was so worried you would not get my wire in time," Zara said. "Luckily, I was right there in the shop when the boy delivered it." It was then Cordelia's gaze fell on Wade, who was standing back a polite ways. "And you must be Mr. Lawrence, the man who brought her here." Zara started to introduce them, feeling a sudden knot of anxiety. What on earth was she supposed to tell her aunt about how they met? About what Wade had saved her from? Wade, bless his heart, took care of the problem by speaking to Cordelia himself. "It is a real pleasure to meet you, ma'am." "It is Miss Adams," Cordelia corrected, but with a kind smile. "I never did get around to marrying. And the pleasure is all mine, Mr. Lawrence. I cannot thank you enough for getting my niece here in one piece." A carriage was sitting outside the station for them. As they rolled through the San Francisco streets, Zara's head was on a swivel. She was trying to take in the amazing sights, the steep hills, the bay, the tall fancy buildings, while also listening to her aunt and Wade talk. It did not take long to see that Cordelia was a woman who got straight to the point. "So, Mr. Lawrence," she said, "Zara's wire just said you were bringing her from Nevada. If you do not mind my asking, how did the two of you end up traveling together?" Wade just looked over at Zara, making it clear it was her story to tell. It is a long and messy story, Aunt," Zara started, her voice a little shaky. "After Mama passed, Papa just changed. He got mean, and he had to have his way. He tried to set me up in marriages that I just could not accept." The light in Cordelia's eyes went out. "I was afraid of that. His letters just stopped, and yours started sounding so careful." 3 days ago, Zara took a deep breath to steady herself. He put me up on a block in the saloon. Said he was going to teach me a lesson in obedience. Cordelia let out a sharp gasp, her hand flying up to cover her mouth. Good Lord. Zachariah really tried to sell you? He did not just try, he sold me, Zara said, her voice barely a whisper. To Mr. Lawrence. And the first thing he did was ask me where I needed to go. When I told him San Francisco, he brought me here. Cordelia's head whipped around to look at Wade, her face a storm of disbelief and deep, heartfelt thanks. You bought my niece's freedom. Wade looked like he would rather be anywhere else. It just seemed like the right thing to do, ma'am. The right thing? Cordelia repeated, her voice soft with wonder. Mr. Lawrence, I do not know a whole lot of men who would call buying a woman's freedom and then bringing her halfway across the country the right thing. Wade shifted a little in his seat. Miss Adams has already given me her word she will pay me back when she can. I told her there was not any rush. Pay you back? Cordelia looked back and forth between Wade and Zara. That is absolute nonsense. I will pay back whatever that man squeezed out of you, and I will do it right now. Ma'am, that is really not necessary, Wade said, his voice firm. I insist. Cordelia's tone made it clear there was no room for argument. I may not be rich like Zachariah, but my little shop does just fine for me. Now you tell me, how much did that shameful business end up costing you? Wade hesitated for a good while, but finally he told her the number. Cordelia's eyebrows shot up for just a second, but then she gave a firm nod. I will have a bank draft for you in the morning. The carriage turned down a quiet street lined with tidy houses and trees, finally pulling up to a lovely two-story place with a little garden out front. The bottom floor was a storefront with a handsome sign that read, Cordelia's Creations. Well, here we are, Cordelia announced as the driver gave them a hand down. My home and my livelihood. I am upstairs and there is more than enough room for you, Zara. Mr. Lawrence, you simply must stay for supper. After everything you have done for my niece, it is the absolute least I can do. Stepping inside the shop was like entering a different world for Zara. Beautiful dresses stood on display. There were bolts of fabric in every color and feel you could dream of. Through a back doorway, she could see a workroom where a few young women were hard at work sewing. Aunt, it is amazing, Zara said, and she meant it with all her heart. It is just like you wrote in your letters, only 100 times better. Cordelia's face lit up. It has taken a long time and a lot of hard work, but yes, I am mighty proud of it. She guided them up a staircase in the back of the shop that led to a cozy apartment. Come on. Let me show you where you will be staying, Zara. I am sure you want to wash the trail off you. Mr. Lawrence, please make yourself at home in the parlor. Zara's room was cozy and sweet, with a window that looked out on the garden out back. Cordelia helped her unpack the few things she owned, clucking her tongue over the scant collection of clothes. Well, we can fix that soon enough, she said briskly. I will have you in new dresses before the week is out. Now sit down and tell me the whole story. I do not want the short version you gave us in the carriage. I want every last detail. Zara sank down onto the bed, and all the feelings she had been holding back just came flooding out. Oh, Aunt Cordelia, it has been so awful since Mama left us. Papa turned into a man I did not even know. For a while I told myself it was just the sorrow, but it never got better. He got wrapped up in his money and what folks in town thought of him. He started looking at me like I was just another piece of property to be bartered with. She told her aunt about the 3 older, wealthy men her father had picked out for her, men who cared more about having a young trophy on their arm than they ever would about her. She told her about her plan to run away, about getting caught and hauled down to that saloon, and the shame of being put on display like that. And that is when Mr. Lawrence, when Wade showed up, Zara went on. He paid more than anybody else, and when it was all settled, he just looked at me and asked where I needed to go. I tell you, it was something else. Cordelia looked at her niece with a thoughtful expression. And And through all of that travel, he showed you proper respect? Nothing but respect, Zara promised her. He was a true gentleman the whole time. One night, an inn only had one room left, so he went and slept in the livery stable. Well, I'll be, Cordelia murmured. And what are his plans now that he has brought you to San Francisco? Zara paused for a moment. I am not completely certain. He talked about some business in Sacramento. He is thinking about buying a ranch out that way. I reckon he plans on heading back tomorrow. Cordelia's keen eyes saw the flicker of sadness that came with Zara's words. I understand, was all she said. Well, we ought to get ready for supper. I imagine you are both starved after your long trip. Supper was a wonderful meal in Cordelia's small dining room. She turned out to be a fantastic cook and an even better person to talk to, skillfully drawing Wade's story out of him with her questions. He shared more about his life than he had with Zara, telling them about his time as a deputy marshal, why he decided to go back to ranching, and his hopes of building his own place near Sacramento. The land I have my eye on has good water and plenty of grass, he explained. It is not anything fancy, but it is enough to build a good life on. And will you be running this ranch all on your own? Cordelia asked with a look of innocence. But Zara sensed a deeper meaning in the question. Wade glanced over at Zara for a second before he answered. For now, I will, though I hope that is not always the case. The evening went by wonderfully, and far too fast for Zara. As the clock on the mantel chimed 10, Wade got up to go. I had better go find a place to stay for the night, he said. My train back to Sacramento leaves early in the morning. That is nonsense, Cordelia announced. I have a perfectly good guest room. I will not allow you to stay somewhere else. Wade seemed surprised by her kindness. That is mighty generous, but I would not want to be a bother. Mr. Lawrence, after everything you have done for my niece, you could never be a bother in this house, Cordelia said with finality. Besides, this will give us a chance to finish our talk over breakfast. After a little more convincing, Wade agreed to stay. Cordelia led him to the guest room, which left Zara alone with her thoughts for a minute. The hard truth that Wade would be gone tomorrow settled on her like a heavy blanket. In just under a week, this man had become her anchor, her sense of hope. The idea of going on without him felt deeply wrong, like a vital piece of her new life would be gone. Later that night, as Zara was getting into her nightgown, a quiet knock came from her door. When she opened it, she saw Cordelia standing there. Can I come in for a moment? Her aunt asked. Zara nodded, and Cordelia stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. She watched Zara for a second before she finally spoke. You have feelings for him, do you not? She asked plainly. Zara could feel her face grow warm. It is complicated. Cordelia smiled with kindness. Matters of the heart almost always are. But I have been watching you two all evening, and I do not think I am wrong to believe that his feelings are the same. It is much too soon, Zara argued. We have known each other for less than a week, and so much has happened. Time is not a good way to measure a true connection, Cordelia replied. Your mother knew she was going to marry your father the very first time they met. She said so in a letter she sent me. Her face softened as she remembered. She wrote, I have met the man I am going to spend my life with, Cord. Do not ask me how I know, I just know it. Zara was shocked to hear this. She never told me that. She probably would have, when you were a bit older. Cordelia gently patted Zara's hand. I am not telling you to make any quick decisions, only that you need to be truthful with yourself about your feelings. After Cordelia went back to her room, Zara stood at her window, staring out at the garden lit by the moon. What did she truly feel for Wade Lawrence? She was grateful, of course. She respected his honesty and his bravery. She admired his quiet strength and his gentle nature. But was there something more? The ache in her heart at the idea of him leaving suggested there was. Morning arrived far too soon. Zara got dressed with extra care, choosing her best blue calico dress, and went to have breakfast with her aunt and Wade. The talk was cheerful, but it was colored by the knowledge that a goodbye was coming soon. Before she knew it, it was time for Wade to head to the station. Cordelia politely excused herself to take care of something in the shop, which left Zara and Wade by themselves in the front parlor. "Your aunt is quite a woman," Wade said. "I can surely understand why you wanted to come here." Zara agreed. "She has the same strength and independent spirit as my mother." Wade paused, then he reached inside his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I want you to take this," he said, holding it toward her. Zara accepted it, her eyes full of questions. "It is the money your father insisted on," Wade clarified. "I will not take it back from you or from your aunt. Use it to make a new life for yourself here." "Wade, I cannot," she started. But he cut her off gently. "Please. It would mean the world to me to know that it was used for a good reason." Zara could feel tears starting to well up in her eyes. "I do not know how I can ever thank you for all that you have done." Wade took a step closer, his blue eyes fixed on hers. "There is no need for thanks. These last few days with you have been—" He stopped, trying to find the words. "More important to me than I can say." The quiet moment stretched between them, full of feelings that were not being said out loud. Zara found herself wishing that he would kiss her, and then she blushed at how bold she was being. "I should go," Wade said at last. "But I would like to write to you, if you would welcome it." "I would welcome it very much," Zara replied immediately. There was another moment of silence, and then Wade did something she did not expect. He took her hand and lifted it to his lips, pressing a soft kiss against her knuckles. The gesture was old-fashioned, but it felt incredibly personal. "Until we meet again, Zara Adams," he whispered. And then he was gone, leaving Zara standing alone in her aunt's parlor, with her heart racing and her hands still tingling from his touch. The days that came after were a whirlwind of new things for Zara. Cordelia began teaching her the dressmaking business, starting her with simple jobs, but soon seeing that her niece had a real talent for design. She also introduced Zara to her friends, a group of independent women who ran their own businesses, had traveled the world, or had simply chosen to live outside of what was expected. "San Francisco gives women more freedom than most places," Cordelia told her. "Though we still have many barriers, of course." Zara dedicated herself to learning everything she could, both about making dresses and about the bigger world around her. Cordelia had a small library in her home, which Zara happily explored every evening. Sometimes she would read out loud to her aunt while the older woman worked on her sewing, and they would talk about everything from books to politics to the latest fashions. But even with her busy days and the thrill of her new life, Zara's thoughts often drifted back to Wade. He kept his promise, writing to her faithfully once a week. His letters always arrived on Friday, right on schedule. He wrote about the progress he was making on buying the ranch, the small house on the property that he was fixing up, and his dreams for the land. His writing was just like his speaking, direct and honest, but full of thought, with a dry sense of humor that always made Zara smile. She wrote back to him just as regularly, telling him about her life in San Francisco, her new skills in the dress shop, and the books she was reading. She found it was easier to be open in her letters than she had been when they were together, maybe because the distance made it simpler to share her true thoughts and feelings. The weeks passed by, and the heat of summer turned into the cool air of autumn. Zara had been in San Francisco for almost 2 months when a letter came from Wade that was different from the others. "I will be coming back to San Francisco next week," he wrote. "There are some things I need to talk to you about, things that are too important for a letter. If it is all right with you and your aunt, I would like to come and call on you." Zara's heart beat faster as she read his words. What could be so important? And why did the thought of seeing Wade again fill her with so much happiness and so much worry all at once? Cordelia, who was reading the letter over Zara's shoulder, smiled as if she already knew the answer. "Well now, my dear, it sounds like Mr. Lawrence has made up his mind about something." "What are you talking about?" Zara asked, even though a part of her already knew. A man does not travel hundreds of miles to talk about things unless those things are matters of the heart, Cordelia said with a gentle, knowing laugh. I do believe your cowboy is getting ready to tell you how he feels. Zara's face turned red. You cannot know that for sure. Perhaps not for certain, Cordelia allowed. But I have seen enough of life to know the signs when I see them. The real question is, how do you feel about it, if he does tell you? That was the question Zara had been asking herself more and more. In the week since he had left, her feelings for Wade had only become stronger. His letters showed a depth of character, a sharp mind, and a kindness that proved her first impressions of him were completely right. She found herself comparing other men to him, and none of them ever measured up. I care for him, she finally confessed. More than I ever thought I could in such a short amount of time. Cordelia nodded, looking pleased with her answer. In that case, we will be sure to welcome Mr. Lawrence with open arms when he gets here. His arrival the next Tuesday stirred up a little commotion in Cordelia's shop. The young women sewing in the back giggled into their hands when the tall cowboy stepped inside, hat in his hands, looking a bit like a fish out of water among all the fancy dresses. But his eyes found Zara right away, and the honest warmth in his look sent a little shiver right through her. Welcome back to San Francisco, Mr. Lawrence. Cordelia greeted him with a friendly smile. Zara, dear, why don't you take Mr. Lawrence out to the garden? It is a beautiful afternoon for some tea outside. The little garden behind the shop had become Zara's favorite spot. A quiet place with a couple of fruit trees, some blooming flowers, and a stone bench next to a small fountain. As they got settled on the bench with the tea tray Cordelia had sent out, Zara all of a sudden felt tongue-tied, not sure what to say to this man whose letters had come to mean so much to her. Wade seemed just as unsure, turning his hat over and over in his hands before he finally set it down. You're looking well, he said. San Francisco certainly seems to suit you. It does, Zara agreed with a smile. Aunt Cordelia has been just wonderful, and I am learning so much working at the shop. I have really enjoyed reading your letters, Wade said. They gave me a little window into your new life out here. And I have enjoyed yours as well, Zara said back. How is everything with the ranch coming along? Wade's whole face lit up. Well, that is part of the news I came to tell you. The sale is final. The place is all mine now. 160 acres with a good water source and decent grass for grazing. The house needs some work, but its bones are solid. I have been fixing it up a little at a time. That is just wonderful, Zara said, and she truly meant it. You must be so proud. I am. Wade paused for a moment, then he reached into his coat pocket. I brought something I wanted to show you. He pulled out a small photograph and handed it over to her. The picture showed a simple farmhouse with a wide front porch, tucked up against a background of rolling hills. A huge oak tree stood in the yard, and you could see a small creek running in the foreground. It is beautiful, Zara said, looking closely at the picture. It is not much to look at, Wade said. But it is a good piece of land. Plenty of room to build on. There was a seriousness in his voice that made Zara look up from the photograph. His blue eyes were fixed on her, like he was looking for an answer to a question he had not asked yet. Zara, he started, but then he hesitated. He took a slow breath and started over. Over these past few months, getting your letters. I started looking forward to Fridays more than anything else in my whole life. Zara could feel her own heart start to beat a little faster. I felt the same way about your letters, she said, hoping to encourage him. Wade went on. The ranch is a fine place, but a house does not feel like a home until you have the right person in it. He reached out and gently took her hand in his. I came all the way to San Francisco because I was hoping you might think about making a life in Sacramento. With me. Even though she had been half expecting it, hearing the words out loud still left Zara breathless. Are you asking me to marry you, Wade? I am, he said, plain and simple. I know we have not known each other long, and you are just getting my own life started here. I would never ask you to abandon that if it is what you truly desire, but I honestly believe we could make something wonderful together, if you're willing. Zara looked down at their hands clasped together, her thoughts swirling. Was this happening too fast? Was she simply exchanging one man's power for another's? But as soon as the questions came, she knew the answers. Wade had never once tried to direct her, not from the first moment he had asked for her thoughts. He had always honored her decisions and her freedom. "Before I give you my answer," she said with care, "there is something I must know. That day back in paradise when you secured my freedom, was this the outcome you had in mind?" Wade shook his head without hesitation. "No. I did what I did then because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected something from you. My feelings for you developed on our journey and through our letters." He gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "I do not want to possess you, Zara. I want to be your partner. There is a world of difference." It was the perfect response. Zara felt a smile spread across her face, a warm confidence filling her heart. "Then yes, Wade Lawrence, I will marry you and help you make that house a real home." The pure happiness that lit up Wade's face washed away any small doubt she might have held on to. He brought her hand to his lips, just as he did on the day he departed from San Francisco. This time, however, the gesture felt like a promise for the future, not a goodbye. "There is something more I need to tell you," Wade said after a little while. "About paradise." Zara grew a little tense. "What about it?" "After I saw you settled here, I went back to Nevada. I brought legal action against your father for fraud, unlawful confinement, and a few other things. Judge Harmon took a special interest in the matter." Zara just stared at him. "You had my father taken into custody. He was indeed arrested." "Yes. The trial took place 2 weeks ago. He received a sentence of 5 years in the territorial prison." Wade observed her reaction closely. "I know I should have spoken with you first. I realize that, but I could not allow his actions to go without consequence, not only for your sake, but to make certain he could never do that to another woman." Zara remained quiet, letting the news sink in. Her father was in prison. The man who raised her, who had once shown love to her and her mother, was now answering for his crimes. She felt a tangle of different feelings: relief, sorrow, a small sting of guilt, but mostly a deep sense of justice. "Thank you for telling me," she said at last, "and for doing what you did. It was the correct thing, even if it is hard to hear." Wade nodded, his eyes full of understanding. "And there is one last thing. The court required him to make amends. Your father's property was sold off and the money is being kept in a trust for you. It is a very large amount of money. This news was even more shocking. I am to receive my father's wealth after all that has happened. Judge Harmon was firm that it was your rightful inheritance from your mother, if nothing else. You do not need to figure out what to do with it right away, but it will be there for you when you are ready." Zara shook her head slowly, astonished by how completely her world had been turned upside down in just a few months. From being treated like an object to be sold, she was now a woman with her own money, valuable skills, a loving aunt, and a man who wanted to build a life with her as his equal. "I never imagined any of this," she said in a soft voice. Wade smiled. "Neither did I, but I am thankful for every single step of the journey that brought us to this moment." Later that evening, after Wade had gone back to his hotel with a promise to visit the next day, Zara sat with Cordelia in the parlor. She shared the news about the proposal and everything else Wade had told her. "Well now," Cordelia said when Zara had finished her story, "a ranch in Sacramento, a significant inheritance, and a man who values your independence. That is quite an outcome for a girl who showed up at my shop with only the clothes on her back just 2 months ago." Zara let out a laugh. "When you say it like that, it does sound pretty amazing. Life is often like that, my dear." Cordelia's face grew thoughtful. "I will miss you terribly, you know, but Sacramento is not so very far away. And I must admit, I am already looking forward to spoiling some grandnieces or grandnephews." Zara's cheeks turned pink. "We have not even talked about having children yet." "There will be plenty of time for all of those talks," Cordelia said with confidence. The important thing is that you have found a man who sees you for who you truly are and treasures what he sees. The weeks that followed were a flurry of activity. Zara and Wade chose a December wedding, which would be held in San Francisco with Cordelia as the host. Wade went back to Sacramento to keep working on the ranch house, vowing to have it ready for them before Christmas. Zara spent her days helping in the dress shop and getting ready for her new life. She designed her own wedding gown, a simple yet beautiful dress made of ivory, silk that had pearl buttons and a delicate lace trim. Cordelia insisted on sewing it herself, staying up late into the night to make sure every single stitch was just right. "Think of it as my wedding present," she told Zara when she tried to object to the cost and the work. Letters flew back and forth between San Francisco and Sacramento, but now they were filled with plans for their life and their shared hopes. Wade wrote about adding a second bedroom to the house for the future. That comment made Zara blush, even as she smiled at what it meant. She wrote back with lists of things they would need for their new home, books she wanted to bring with her, and ideas for a small garden of her own. December came in with surprisingly mild weather, as if the world itself was giving its blessing to their marriage. The wedding was small but full of joy, taking place in Cordelia's parlor with a few close friends attending. Zara wore her gorgeous gown and held a bouquet of winter roses. Wade, looking very handsome and a little nervous in a brand new suit, could not look away from her as she walked into the room on Cordelia's arm. The minister, who was a friend of Cordelia's, made the ceremony short and heartfelt. When he declared them husband and wife, Wade's kiss was tender, but it held the promise of a deeper love to come. Cordelia dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, and even the women from the shop were sniffling softly. The wedding breakfast afterward was a happy affair with champagne and a spectacular cake. As they got ready to head for the train station, they learned Wade had arranged for them to stay at a hotel in Sacramento for their wedding night before going on to the ranch. Cordelia pulled Zara into one last hug. "Be happy, my dearest girl," she whispered, "and always remember you have a home here, both of you." Zara held on to her aunt for a long moment, filled with so much gratitude for this woman who had opened not just her home but also her heart. "Thank you for absolutely everything," she said. "We will come visit all the time, I promise." The train ride to Sacramento went by in a happy daze. Zara was so aware of Wade sitting next to her, of the new gold band on her finger, and of the reality that she was now Mrs. Lawrence. The idea was both exciting and a little hard to believe. Their wedding night in Sacramento's best hotel was a beautiful discovery. Wade was as gentle and thoughtful in their most private moments as he had been in every other part of their lives together. Zara, who was nervous at the start, found herself responding with a passion she never knew she had. In the quiet moments that followed, resting in her husband's arms, she felt a powerful feeling of rightness, like she had finally found her real place in the world. The next day, they made the last part of the journey to their new home. As the wagon Wade had rented reached the top of a hill, the ranch appeared below them, the house from the picture now real, with smoke gently rising from, smoke curling welcomingly from the chimney, and new curtains peeking out the windows. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lawrence," Wade said, his arm pulling her just a little tighter. Home. It was such a small word, but it held the entire world. As Wade lifted her down from the wagon and carried her right across the threshold of their house, Zara felt the last few pieces of her new life settle perfectly into place. This was where she was supposed to be, not as some property to be sold off, but as a woman valued for her own self, ready to build a future with the man who asked that all-important question on a dusty street in paradise. "Where to?" he had asked, and it seemed they had found the answer together. 5 years passed by, and every single one brought new joys and trials to the Lawrence Ranch. The house got bigger as their family grew, first with the birth of their son William in the winter of 1877, and then with their daughter Eleanor 2 years later. Wade's careful management and Zara's smart investments with her inheritance had turned their humble property into one of the most successful ranches in the whole region. Zara had even used a part of her inheritance to start up a small business of her own, a dress shop down in Sacramento. It was inspired by Cordelia's, but all the designs were uniquely hers. The shop prospered under her care even as she juggled being a mother and life on the ranch. Wade had supported her dreams from the very beginning, often looking after the children himself while she was working in town. Cordelia visited often, absolutely loving her role as the honorary grandmother to the Lawrence children. She had expanded her own San Francisco shop and now had a dozen seamstresses working for her, including a few young women that Zara had recommended from the Sacramento area. On this particular evening in the summer of 1880, Zara stood on the porch of their home just watching Wade teach 5-year-old William to ride his new pony, while 3-year-old Eleanor giggled from her perch on the fence. The setting sun washed the whole scene in a golden light, turning Wade's dark hair to bronze and shining on the proud set of his shoulders as he guided their son. As she watched her family, Zara thought back on the long journey that brought her to this moment. From a desperate young woman standing on an auction block to a respected businesswoman, a cherished wife, and a mother, it all felt like a miracle. And yet, it had all started with a single question from a man who understood that being free meant nothing if you did not have a choice. Where to? Wade had asked her on that pivotal day. And together they had found their answer. It was not a place on a map, but a shared life they had built on respect, understanding, and love. Wade looked up then and caught her watching them. He gave her that same warm smile that still made her heart flutter, and he motioned for her to come join them. As Zara stepped off the porch to wrap her family in an embrace in the fading daylight, she knew with complete certainty that this was exactly where she was always meant to be. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.